All right, welcome my little dinguses to our third video lesson for this chapter. We're talking today about solving quadratic equations using what's called a square root. So this is going to make use of something you've seen before. We didn't really get a chance this year to take too good of a look at it, but we're talking about square roots. All right, so let's take a look at some examples. So first of all, what we're going to do is think about what the heck is a square root. So let's take a look at our first example. What I have here is x squared equals 25. Notice here that there is no x value. So when we take a look at a quadratic equation, we've been seeing things, for example, like x squared, plus 2x plus 1 equals 0. And we solve things like that where there was an x term and then a number by itself. But now what we do is we basically eliminated this value of x in the middle. Now we're left with a value of x squared plus 1 equals 0. And we're trying to solve a problem like that where there's no x. Since we do that, we can really get x by itself. So here's what we're thinking about, okay? X squared equals 25. Now we'll just think through this answer. When you think of the value of square, remember what that means is x times x is going to give you 25. So you have two things, a number times itself twice. Okay, whatever x is, you're going to multiply it by itself again. You're going to get 25. So I want you to think what number, when multiplied by itself gives you 25. First thing you should think about is that x equals 5. Okay, 5 times 5 gives you 25. So right away, this gives us a solution. However, there is also something you have to think about with these. Remember back when we factored, when we solved problems with quadratics, how many solutions should we get? Okay, we should get 2 solutions. We talked in our last section about how 2 solutions represents those 2 points where they cross the x-axis. Okay, remember a graph, 2 values where they cross the x-axis, those were our solutions. Could be a possibility where it hits at one point, like the vertex, we could have 1 solution, or it could not hit at all where we have no solution. Okay, but in most cases we're going to have 2 solutions. So what other value would multiply by itself to get 25? Okay, now I want you to really think about this. We have something times itself gives me positive 25. 5 times 5 certainly does, but the other thing as well is negative 5. So x here could also equal negative 5. Why? Because negative 5 times negative 5, that equals a positive 25. Remember, a negative times a negative is going to give you a positive. Okay, so the way we're going to write this is as x equals plus or minus 5. Okay, plus or minus is basically going to take care of both of these 2 solutions. We're going to write it as plus or minus 5. Basically saying my value of x is going to be positive 5 or negative 5. Okay, now going back, how does this make use of what's called a square root? So remember a square root. Square root symbol, we have what's called the radical symbol. Say I take the square root of 16. You guys should know or be able to simplify that. What is the square root of 16? Well, it's 4. Why is the square root of 16 4? Square root basically says what 2 numbers times itself would give you 16. So here 4 times 4 would give you 16. So when I see this value of x squared equals 25, to simplify is to do it short, all I have to do is take the square root of both sides. Okay? Square root and a square, they're basically opposite operations. Okay, we learned how to, if I said 3x equals 9, how to get rid of the 3, you would divide because multiplication and division are opposite operations. Well, same thing here. A square and a square root are 2 opposite things. So when that happens, the square cancels out and you're left with just x equals the square root of 25. And you guys should know the square root of 25 is 5. But the only thing we're going to add on here is to make sure we think about the positive or the negative of that answer. So now let's take this and let's see if we can solve the rest of our problem. So with this, just letting you know, you may need a calculator. So make sure you have your phone out or some sort of calculator by you to calculate these things. And make sure you identify the radical symbol or the square root symbol. All right, second example, we have 3x squared equals 33. How am I going to simplify this first? But remember, go back to our order of operation, PEMDAS. All right, so we're going to do this order, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, and subtracting. When we are solving, remember, we are going to go in the opposite order. So I'm going to start with my division first. I have 3x squared. I am certainly going to get rid of that 3 before I do the exponent. So that's doing the division right there first. That's going to leave me with x squared equals 33 divided by 3 is 11. Now I want to get x by itself, so I'm going to take the square root. Okay, so when I take the square root, I am going to get x equals plus or minus. All right, and here's where you're going to find or need your calculator. You're going to plus or minus 3, whoopsie daisies, 3.32. Okay, so that's just rounding up. So that's plus or minus 3.32. So again, that means it's going to be positive. So again, that tells us x equals positive 3.32. And x would equal negative 3.32. But to shorthand that, I can write it as plus or minus. Okay, we're going to get my two solutions. Okay, so take a look at the next one. I have 2x squared minus 5 equals 10. What do I do first here? So again, opposite order of operations. I'm going to do my adding first. Get that to the other side by adding 5. I get 2x squared equals 15. Then I'm going to divide by 2. Divide by 2. I get x squared equals 15 divided by 2. Okay, now can I leave that as a fraction or change it to a decimal? Let's put that as a decimal. That is going to be 7.5. That's 15 divided by 2. Okay, now I got x by itself. To get the x squared, I'm going to take the square root, or get rid of the x squared, I'm sorry, to take the square root. That's going to cancel those two out. I have x equals plus or minus. Now, what is the square root of 7.5? So this one, again, you're going to need your calculator to figure that out. So the square root of 7.5 is going to give us 1.65. So that's going to give me plus or minus 1.65. Okay, make sure you take a look at your calculator, whether you're using your phone, and figure out how to find the square root. If you don't, be smart. You're good with technology. Try and figure it out, otherwise you have to ask me in class. So again, what we're trying to do here is solving by taking the square roots. All right, more examples here. All right, now I got 77 equals 2x squared minus 3. Notice here I just put the x on the other side, but the same thing applies. I'm going to do my adding and subtracting first. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. That's going to give me 80 equals 2x squared. Divide by 2. I get x squared equals 40. Oops, I just flipped it there. That's fine. Now I got the x squared by itself. I'm going to take the square root to get rid of that. Take the square to the other side, because again, if I do one thing, I got to do it to both sides. So I get x equals the square root of 40, which is x equals plus or minus 6.32. Okay, so those are my two solutions again. Something I might say in your notes to put in simplest radical form. We are going to skip that for now, so you can ignore that. Let's just leave our answers as a decimal. All right, next one, 25 equals x squared divided by 3. All right, now this kind of looks a little funky because we have x squared over 3. All right, what do I do? What am I doing with x squared and 3? I'm dividing, so how do I get rid of the 3? You are going to multiply by that 3 to cancel out. It means I'm going to multiply 25 by 3. 3 times 25 is 75. That's going to equal x squared. Now here to get x by itself, I'm going to take the square root to cancel out that square. Take the square root of 75. That's going to give me x equals plus or minus. Now we have to look at what is the square root of 75. Again, practice with your calculator if you haven't figured that out yet. You should get, try it, plus or minus 8.66. If you're not getting the answers that match, make sure you check and try. Try these out on your calculator. Figure it out. Okay, next example, I want you to pause the video. We have 4x squared minus 5 equals 11. Pause the video right here, see if you can give this one a shot. Ready, set, go. Okay, take a look at what you got. Hopefully you had something in this process. We first added the 5 to the other side. Again, I'm going to do adding and subtracting first. I get 4x squared equals 16. Make sure you did not divide by 4 first or did not take the square root first. Next thing here, I am not taking the square root. I'm going to divide by 4 first. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. X squared, take the square root of that, take the square root of 4. Hey, this one's nice. Smiley face, we get a plus or minus 2. Okay? So again, using the square roots, make sure you're trying these out with your calculator. All right, youngins, 2 more examples here. Let's give these a whirl. So the first one, I got x squared plus 8 equals 3. So now what we're going to do is subtract 8 first. So I'm going to subtract 8. I get x squared equals negative 5. Okay, to simplify, we want to get rid of the square. Boom, cancel it out. Take the square root of 5. I get x equals plus or minus. Try it in your calculator. Take the square root of 5. Let's see what you get. Try it, please. So I got negative 5, take the square root. What the heck do you get? Okay, depending on what your calculator you're using, you should see something such as an error. Oh my God, what the heck does that mean? Error, error, error. So I have the square root of negative 5. What the heck? Square root of negative 5 is giving me an error. What does that mean? Well, what does the square root mean again? Let's go back to the beginning of this lesson. Square root means you have a number times itself, and you're going to get negative 5. Okay, well, if you just think about this, I'm just going to, just for conversation's sake, I'm going to take the square root of 5. And I get about 2.2. Just round it. 2.2, 2.2. That's going to give me 5. But here's the issue, is the negative. Okay? Positive 2.2 and positive 2.2 give me positive 5. All right? But I got a negative. Well, let's say I make one of these negatives. All right? Well, a negative times negative 2.2 times 2.2, yeah, that gives me negative 5. However, are these the same numbers? You may say yes, but negative 2.2 and positive 2.2 are two completely different numbers. Think of a number line. If this was 0, 2.2 would be here, negative 2.2 would be there. They are completely different numbers on completely different locations on a number line. So why is this an error? Is because you cannot take the square root of a negative. So this one means no solution, folks. So key thing, you might want to write this down in notes, jot it down on the side. Cannot take the square root of a negative. That is a no-no. Now, what does no solution mean? Let's review from last section. What does no solution mean again? Think of a graph. This is my graph. Where's my parabola going to be if there's no solution? Well, what do solutions represent? We called them zeros. We called them roots. No solution would mean that my graph, my parabola, whether it's up there or down there, does not hit the x-axis. So just giving you a quick review from last section. Okay, last example for today. Now looking at this one, you see the negative on the other side, negative 1660. Be careful here. We are going to wait until all we have is the x squared left before we make that decision that there's no solution. So this one, we are going to subtract 4 first. So we're going to get negative 2x squared equals negative 1664. Okay, so I'm going to just get x squared by itself first. Now the reason why, if you be smart and think about why we do that next, what am I going to do? Divide by negative 2. When I divide by negative 2, notice I have negative over a negative. That is going to change to a positive. So I can't just jump the gun when I see a negative. I got to simplify first, get x squared by itself. So when dividing 1664 by 2, that's going to give me 832. Now lastly, notice how it's positive. I can take the square root. I should be all good. I'm going to get x equals plus or minus square root of 832, if you plugged it in a calculator, is 28.8, plus or minus. Okay? So, key things in these two examples, make sure you can't take the square root of a negative, but make sure you simplify first before you make that decision. All right, hope you enjoyed, kids. We'll see you in class. Good luck on your practice problems. One more section left in this chapter. Let's get it.